Audacity in 3, 2, 1.
Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Lynn, and I'm here with my co-host, Marissa Roy. And in today's episode, we are going to be talking about, I don't know if it's necessarily like a specific topic in particular that I can just be like, this is what it's labeled, but we're going to talk about just kind of like being in your routine. It's easy when it's easy, and it's hard when it's hard. If that makes any sense at all.
I feel like this is like for clickbait and for the hook. I feel like this is the secret ticket to becoming unstoppable in your fitness journey. Like becoming unstoppable means nothing gets in your way. You're resourceful, you're relentless in your pursuit of your goals, and you actually know how to keep going when times get tough. And I think that this is really the secret that no one wants to hear and no one wants to face because they'd rather just wait until things, quote unquote, calm down in life.
Yeah, I love that. The secrets to becoming like relentless. I like that. Yeah. So the topic kind of spurred because I know I've talked about it a lot. I love listening to podcasts. I like really got into them. I feel like with everyone else in 2020 when the world shut down. So I love Mind Pump. I love the three guys, and I really like the advice that they give out, but I just have grown to love them as like people. And I listen to them a lot because they're all parents. And so I love listening to them talk about their kids. And that's probably what I like most about them. But if you are familiar with their dynamic, I feel like Sal is just like always on his game. Like he's always working out. And then the other two guys are just not as, and I think it's Justin. I think Justin is like kind of getting back, or it was like really getting back into things. And he was working out and like on top of his game with his diet. And he had started to make some really big changes in like 6 weeks. And he one day came back into the studio and was limping. And I guess they kind of called him out and like had him talk about it on air. And so he was like, yeah, it's just really funny because they're older. I think they're in their 40s. And he was like, it was just this like perfect storm of like the situations. He was like, it was Easter, like I was cooking the brisket, and I just realized like I hadn't really eaten anything the entire day. And I was drinking alcohol. Like that was like all I was eating. It was just like alcohol. And then they wanted to play wiffle ball. And he goes, and someone hit the ball, and he goes, and I just made this like movement like to go after a ball. And he's like, and I pulled like my leg. I don't know if I think it was his quad. And he's like, and it's just this like reoccurring injury. And he's like, and I just pulled again. And he was like, it just happened. So they were kind of talking to him like, how is this going to affect you now? Because you were so motivated, you were making all of this progress, and now everything kind of has come to a halt because of this injury, because you're going to have to rehab. And then he was talking about, yeah, like I was like, I'm going to be traveling. And so I'm going to be traveling on top of rehabbing an injury that like really set me back in the gym. And so they're kind of like, what are you going to do? And he was like, well, I'm just have this mindset of like, if I can get through this, like, then I'm like, that momentum is really going to get going. Like I'm really like, if I can do this when it's hard, like it's just like I can do anything at this point. And so they were like, man, I love your mindset. Like, that's awesome that you're thinking about it that way. And they started talking about how like, it's easy when it's easy, right? Like when you're in your routine, when you're home, when you're have all of this free time, right? Like you can work out whenever you want. And like, it's so easy to stay on track with your fitness and nutrition when it's easy, when you have nothing going on. But it's hard when you have parties and events or an injury or you've got kids or all of these things. So I thought that was just like a really, really good topic to hit on today, because I feel like it's just like a really good topic that we can chat with about our clients. And like, we see this with our clients and we see it within ourselves, right? It's like, you could, Marissa, I mean, you're traveling so much more than I feel like you ever have. And so you can make an excuse like, oh, I'm not going to track or I'm not going to work out because I'm traveling. And yeah, like if you were traveling like 1 week out of the year, it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal. But if you're traveling a third of the year, like it's important that you have a game plan so you can stay on track when you're traveling. Otherwise, you're going to like start to slide back in the other direction.
Yeah. Oh man, I love this for a lot of reasons, and I think you actually sparked something in me when you said like, Marissa, you've been traveling a lot lately, and I didn't really think about how this applies to me, but it actually really does. And I think of this as like the lean in mentality of like when there's something ahead of you that looks difficult, the obstacle is the way. Lean into the difficulty and prove to yourself that you can do it, in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, as you said that it does apply to me, not because I'm just traveling through like basically all of April, traveling. I'm in Arizona right now, so I'm actually for the first time in like ever behind on time compared to you. So I'm an hour behind you instead of 2 ahead. But adjusting to that, and I will share that I feel as though I have kind of let certain habits slip slowly over time because I got into like, I finished my cut for the wedding last summer. I started intuitively eating. That was going really well. And also doing CrossFit was going really well. And I was really enjoying all of that and was pushing myself really hard. So I was getting away with a lot. I was getting away with eating out a lot. I was getting away with not getting a lot of steps in every single day. And the business is growing. My team is growing. The amount of time that I need to spend on meetings holding my team accountable is growing. And so the amount of stress of, how much overhead we have, how many salaries I have to support is also growing. And so the stress has increased over the course of like this year. The goals that we have are really big and ominous and scary. And sometimes it feels like an insurmountable mountain to climb. And I realized that I have started to lean on some really unproductive habits to cope with that stress. If you, actually, no one's heard this yet. Like I've struggled with like stress eating and emotional eating for the first time in a really long time. And a lot of the thing that I preach, it's the weekend, I'm going to indulge in this. And I'm telling myself that I'm listening to my hunger signals, and I'm not. I'm just overindulging. And then I get into I'll start over on Monday mentality. And then I start over on Monday, but I feel so horrible on Monday because of all the damage I did on Saturday and Sunday that it's almost less motivating to get back into it. My energy sucks. How I show up as a leader goes, down the gutter. And so I have recommitted myself to the process of doing something different to manage my stress. So I've actually been journaling every night, which has been, for the first time, it's clicked. Like the journaling thing has always been this ominous. I don't get it. I feel like I want to rush through it. It seems stupid. I haven't gotten anything out of it before. For the first time, it's clicked as an actual outlet that is something productive that helps me work through those stressors. And working on acknowledging those cravings, acknowledging the want to overeat, to overindulge, and picking something differently, and also recommitting to myself to the practice of tracking macros, hitting macros intentionally, not to diet, but just to hit macros and be consistent, and training more regularly than I have been. And so it has not been long since I have recommitted myself to that, to be very clear. It has not been long, but I already feel better. And it's not going to get easier. In fact, traveling right now, it's definitely the hardest time to track macros because like this house that we're staying in is Aaron's cousins. There's 5 people in this house at all times because he also has roommates. The fridge is full of stuff that I'm not going to eat. So figuring out food on the fly, tracking, hitting macros. The first day that I actually hit the macros that I have set was yesterday. And I feel great today. Like I forgot how good it feels to wake up and be like, wow, I hit my macros. I feel good today. I'm not bloated. I digested my food well, like all of that. And so I'm kind of learning this right now again, because I've gone through this before. And I haven't gone backwards all that significantly, but it's the principles of prioritizing yourself, leaning in when it's difficult, and committing to the process that, yeah, might take you a couple extra minutes to track your food, or might take you a little bit more thought to plan something out. But it's become something for me where I'm proving to myself that I'm capable of balancing that and taking care of myself in a productive manner versus leaning on destructive habits. Because I think a lot of times we settle into the mindset of, well, something's got to give. You can't do it all. You work is busy. This takes a backseat. I was falling very much into the mentality that we coach our clients out of on a daily basis. And I recognized it and I realized it had to stop. So thank you, Christina, for shedding some light on something that I didn't even realize was happening currently.
You're so welcome. Well, I love what you're, number one, I love that you are, and I feel like both of us are like this, being open and honest and vulnerable with our listeners, and like not being afraid to admit that, like, hey, we both run, coaching businesses and we're fitness professionals, but like, yet at the same time, we're still human. Like we still struggle on the weekends, right? Like when someone's like, hey, do you want another beer? And you're like, nah, no, it doesn't fit my macros, or like, oh, what's another slice of pizza? Right? Like we still have those exact same temptations. I wouldn't say that they are any easier for us. Like we love pizza. I do. I love beer, right? Like I love alcohol. Like I love those things. It's still very hard for me to say no in situations like that. But like we have proven to ourselves, like through preps and through, diets and through things, that we can do it. Like we know how to do it, right? Like we know how to say no. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not hard for us in those situations. We still struggle. So I do appreciate you being vulnerable. And I think the other thing is sometimes I find myself on social media, like it's very easy to share like a before and after, right? Or to show like, oh, this was me back in 2012. I used to do this. It's very difficult to say like, I'm currently struggling with something.
Yeah.
I don't know why. And I don't know your opinion on this, because I felt this way when I was going through my postpartum journey. And like, I felt very, very, I don't know if it just feels more raw because you're currently in those emotions. Like I remember I was 1 month postpartum and I was doing a try on haul for a clothing company. And I was like, oh, wow, like this doesn't look that bad, right? 1 month postpartum. I'm like, oh, and then I was like, but if I pull down the high-waisted like joggers, I'm like, I was like, this is more real. And I don't want to give the illusion that like, I just like quote unquote bounce back, because in no way did I do that a month like later. And so I was like struggling. I was like, do I share this photo? Because it's not flattering. And it's like, this is my current reality. And I felt very conflicted as a fitness professional, but I went ahead and shared it anyway. And so I was like, wow, like, why is it so easy to share? Like, oh, I struggled with this years ago, but like, I'm currently struggling with this now. So.
Yeah. Well, it's that like, the whole phrase, like your mess is your message, share your mess to connect with others and all of that. But there's also like the conflicting narrative of like, share your mess after you've gotten through the mess. Don't share it when you're in it. Because you need to show that you are capable of getting over that mess. But I think that there is power in the vulnerability of sharing the mess as you're going through it, because it is a declaration that you will get through it. And it's kind of feeding into that confidence of I'm sharing this because I know I'm going to get through it, versus like hiding it because I'm scared that I won't ever get over it. And it like plays into itself, right? Because if I say that out loud on the podcast, which like we have, I don't know how many hundreds of listeners, then I'm kind of being held accountable to doing it now. Because gosh, it would be embarrassing if 2 months down the road I did an update and I was like, it's gotten worse.
Yeah, I've gained 20 pounds.
Yeah. So like, I think just like there's power in the vulnerability of sharing, for the accountability, for the support, for the community aspect. Because I know right off the bat, I can think of 2 clients of mine who listen to the podcast religiously that are going to reach out to me and say, I'm so appreciative that you shared that. It really humanized you, this and that. But our gut instinct is to position ourselves as an authority of like, I must only share after I've gotten through it. And like you, it's very easy for me to pull that same picture from 2013 that I post all the time of what I looked like and what I was going through at that time, because that is my origin story. It is important for me to share that. But at the same time, like, yeah, maybe there's something I should be sharing right now. I took a picture in a dressing room on Sunday that I don't love, and maybe I should share that.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny that you say that. I think I've shared this before. I can't remember what weekend. I know that you've shared examples like this too. I can't remember what weekend it was, but my coach. So as most of you guys know, I work with Justin and Haley, and he's really scary. It's just his persona. He's like incredibly intense. And I was scared to work with him. And I leaned into that. And I was like, I'm scared for a reason, because I think I'm going to be held to like a higher standard of coaching, and I'm going to have to step my game up. And that was scary for me. But that's what I wanted. I didn't want someone to coddle me and say, oh, it's okay, you didn't get your workouts. And so that's why I'm working with him. So as you know, he's really scary. And I forget what weekend it was, but I told him, I was like, hey, I wasn't 100% with my nutrition this weekend. And he was like, I wasn't either. And I was like, oh, like, and it's not like it justified, right? I'm like, oh, like, okay, yeah, I didn't, but it was just kind of nice to have that, like, okay, you're not a robot. Like, you do struggle, even though like you give off this, persona that you do, but it just made me feel a little bit better, because I just went into it feeling so defeated. And I came out of that check-in feeling like a little bit better. And I did the exact same thing with my client. She checked in and she was like, hey, like I was like, I wasn't either. And she was like, oh, and she's like, thank you for sharing that, because and so it was like that trickle down effect. But yeah, so I think that is really helpful for like our listeners to know that, yeah, we are not robots. We're still people. We still struggle, and we still go through certain things, all the time. But I like that, because it's the message that we preach with our clients too, right? Like when you're going through coaching, like it is very advantageous for them to share their story and what they're going through in social media, even if they don't feel like showing up, because it's hard. It's hard to say, I'm currently going through this and I don't know like what's going to happen on the other side. So it is very, very, very brave to share a struggle that you are currently going through on social media. But I will say that from an outsider's perspective, it's very refreshing to see that, because, and I forget who talked about this, but they were saying like on documentaries, like if it was just like, hey, this person was struggling and then boop, they're successful now. It's like, okay, like there's no story to it, right? Like you want to hear the struggle, you want to hear their lowest of lows, because like that is what's so inspiring and that is what's so motivating to keep going. So I always try to think about that. Like if someone was doing a documentary, or like if someone was tuning in, what would they want to see? Like, or like that's I feel like what keeps people going. We're off on a very, very far tangent right now, so I'm going to try to bring it back. This is what happens when we don't have an outline to go off of.
I mean, it's not really that much of a tangent, because I was gonna say like it's the same thing with like we hold ourselves accountable to social media or whatever, but we also, what else is scary is leaning into committing to a process, hiring a coach during the time where you're like, I have so much going on. I'm so busy. I have all this stuff going on and I'm in my mess, right? Like everything sucks. I was just talking to like what to do when your life sucks. Not that client. I was just talking to a client today who basically had to uproot her entire life in the span of like a weekend, like sell her house, move in with her in-laws, and like cram her whole family of 3 kids, by the way, into one room in her in-laws place. And they're living there until November. And like, we just had this conversation about like, hey, our contract is up. And I was basically just like, we just hit this momentum. You are seeing progress you have not yet seen. You feel more energized. You feel better. We just got here. Do not quit while you're ahead. Do not put yourself on the back burner. It is your every instinct, I know, to not continue to commit to yourself, but that's what this is. This is not about me. This is not about me getting paid. This is about you taking a step to say, I'm worth it. And I'm not going to give up this good thing that I have going right now, because I know that the road ahead is difficult and I know that I need to lean into it. And I know how important it is for me to show up for myself and to feel good in my skin, because if you don't have that, what do you have? Like,
yeah.
So yeah, that was a difficult conversation to have, because I just had to reconnect to like my heart. I was like, listen, this I understand like this is a monetary agreement, but like this is not about me. And it breaks my heart to see people put themselves on the back burner for the sole reason of, I want to do it when it's easier. I want to do it when things calm down, when it's not as busy, when I'm not as financially strapped, when I'm not as this, when I'm not as that. Because if they don't learn how to do it now, they're going to stay stuck in the same cycle that they've been in, versus just kind of leaning into the suck. And maybe part of that suck is a financial suck of like, you like just put yourself in a really strapped situation. But those are the people that I'm concerned about the least, because they're the people that are going to make it 10 times worth it. There's one client in particular I can think of who she committed herself to our program and down to the last penny financed her way into our program, to where like she does not have another penny for a dumbbell, for a set of resistance bands, for anything outside of paying for this, paying for groceries, and her daily life expenses. And what did that do for her? She's lost 26 pounds since November. Like, hell yeah. Holy shit, right? I'm the least worried about her, because she is going to scrape every ounce of value out of what we have, and she's going to see the best results through a lot of shit in her life. She had someone very close to her pass away this past week. She's still going. She's still committed. And so I think that there's just something to say about really leaning in when it's difficult. Gosh, myself again for the business. We had this huge epic month from our event in March. It was amazing. So many clients like signed up, re-signed. We had this great financial bump, which put us in a great position to reinvest into the people, into the business. It was awesome. And then April comes around and we had some changes in our business that really spread us thin on time, spread me thin on time, and leads were just not coming in. And we're slow, we're struggling. And now it's taxes. I got to pay out a decent bit to get up to that. And I really want to do this mentorship that's going to help me with my sales skills. But that's money too. But if I don't invest that money, then I don't get better and I don't pull the whole team out of that situation. So it's like, again, lean in when it's difficult, not to say be irresponsible with your money, but there's a difference between not having it and not wanting to spend it because you're scared.
Yeah. Oh man. so many directions, but yeah, I love that you brought it back to that, which is what I wanted to do. But yeah, there are just so many different directions that we can go. So I think that if you're still listening, if you're 23 minutes in and you're still listening, I like what we're trying to say is like, when you're in your routine, when you are at your house, it is easier. It's pretty easy to stay on track, right? Like you have access to your food, you have your normal schedule, you're in your routine. And when the weekends come around, or if you're traveling, or you don't have access to, your normal gym and your normal workouts, and you have to pivot, or you injure yourself. And it's very easy to let all of those things get in the way of your goals and say, well, I can't do this because of this, or kind of like what you were saying, Marissa, because I absolutely fall into this trap. I have a kid, I have a business, I don't have time. It's very, very, very easy to do that. And so when you pivot and you say, do I not have time, or am I not making this a priority right now?
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like reframing and asking yourself those questions, because like I have a tendency to get up early and get straight to work. And like, I would do that because I'm like, I don't have any other time to do this. This is my like quiet time. And then I was like, well, I'm not hitting my steps. I'm not getting my cardio in. I'm not getting a lot of training because like work is a priority. And that is not the case. Like, so I'm like, okay, I need to start my morning with cardio. Like I know I can do this before. I'm going to get back into that routine. And I was like, wow, I feel fucking fantastic. Even if it's just 15 minutes of walking or 15 minutes of a cardio session, I feel that much better when I sit down to do work. I feel already super like accomplished. And I was like, I'm making health a priority again. And I'm still going to like get my work done. I'm just doing something ahead of it. And like, and it's just like just a quick change, but I could very easily have just said, work is, it's too stressful. I have too much work. Like I can't, get cardio in. I can't do this. I just don't have any time. So just like little changes like that. And if you're able to do it when it's easy and like transferring that over on the weekends or when you're traveling, it just makes it so much easier when you're in your routine.
Yeah. Well, it
And
comes down. Oh, go ahead. Finish your
no,
thought.
no, 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 go for it.
I was going to say, it just comes down to like the resiliency that you're building, right? So if we go back to becoming unstoppable, why does this work? Why does this happen? Is because if you lean into that discomfort when you are strapped for cash, strapped for time, strapped for resources, headspace, energy, whatever, and you lean in and you say, I'm going to do it anyways, what does that rewire in your brain? It rewires in your brain the fact that you are capable. Your beliefs start to shift because you think, I just did that. Like, I just got a workout in when I thought it was impossible. I don't know, like made a healthy choice even when I was, on the go, traveling, all these things, hit my macros, even though I'm in a different state, like all these different things. We prove to ourselves that we are capable of keeping a commitment in a difficult situation. And then we are able to do it again and again and again. And that rewires your brain to help you think, wow, I am capable of this. So what else am I capable of? So here's what happens, right? When life does get easier after that hard season, what happens? Your threshold for difficulty is now different. So you go back to your normal routine, and all of a sudden, your normal routine feels so easy because you just did the same thing in a way more difficult circumstance. So now your threshold for tolerating that stress and, just increasing your capacity for life increases. So then you ask yourself, what else can I do? What other goal can I set? And we're constantly, as human beings, challenging ourselves to do more, to be more, to grow. And so the stuff that you thought was hard before, that's on autopilot. And now you've got this new goal that's like, I want to take this to the next level, or I want to focus in on more specific career goals, or I want to, pursue other things in my life that are going to better the capacity of my life. The health and fitness is literally, that's ground zero. That's the foundation for all the other changes that you're capable of making in your life. That's what I think I'm really passionate about. I love health and fitness. It's great. But is that the root of why I do what I do? No, the root of why I do what I do is because the very baseline is, if you take care of your health and your well-being, all these other doors open up for you. Because when those things are on autopilot, you're able to focus on, how can I find a career that I love? How can I take the next step and better my relationships with my family, with my spouse? How can I give back to my community? How can I have more purpose in life and not be strapped down by just the weight of my own perfectionism and people pleasing? That's really what it is.
I have a client in mind who she felt like she had no time to do anything. She was like, I'm constantly thinking about fitness and nutrition and I don't know what to do. I have no time. Like I have all these like goals and aspirations, but I just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm doing. And so she signed on for, 12 weeks of coaching with us. And every week it got a little bit easier and easier and easier. And she was like, I am not thinking about fitness and nutrition anymore because I'm on autopilot. It's easy now. And she's like, and I feel like I have all this time because it's just not constantly something, or like, I'm not constantly picking myself apart when I look in the mirror. Cause she's like, I made these changes, and she didn't have like a whole lot of weight to lose. It was just, she just felt like she had no structure. And now that she finally had that structure, she's like, I mean, like, I look great. Like I feel really good. And she's like, I have all this time. She's writing a book. Like, and she's like, this is something that I had aspirations to do like years down the road. And she's like, but I have all this time now because I'm not constantly thinking about all these things. And like you were saying, Marissa, it's like, that's what we want. And so it's really hard. And if you've ever been on a call with myself or Marissa, like a strategy call, like we are very passionate about what we do because we have seen the potential and we've seen the outcomes of what just quote unquote, like fitness and nutrition can do for for women's lives. So, and I love that because it's like, okay, well, if you're able to, again, do it when it's easy, and then you can do it when it's hard, like, again, it's like that threshold is there. And it's like, I can do this with whatever life throws at me.
Mm-hmm.
And, we do talk about like, okay, like there's never going to be a perfect time to sign up, right? Or to do something or to start towards your goals. Like we absolutely were very big advocates of that. But like we do talk about like, yes, there are maybe some times where like, maybe you might need to scale back, or like, this isn't maybe the best time to start if you're, in the middle of a move, or like I don't know, all of these things all at once. But if you are able to do it and like work through those moments, like it's just, everything is going to feel so much easier for you and your goals. So I have another client who I was thinking about, we were talking, she's worked with us before and she's thought about coming back, and she's like, I'm just struggling with traveling. Like I travel a lot, and like, I was like, well, if you're traveling like at least once a week for every month, I was like, that's a pretty significant amount of time that like, if you're successful during that time, like you're going to get that much closer to your goals. But if you have this limiting belief where I'm traveling, therefore I can't do coaching, like, it's like, if you can do it, then everything else is just going to seem so much easier.
Here's a reframe. Is very simply put, no matter what's going on in your life, is it a priority?
Yeah.
Is it a priority? If the answer is yes, you should do it through the thing that's going on in your life. No questions asked. That is going to be best for you in the long run to become more adaptable, resilient, and unstoppable. If it is not a priority to change your habits, your lifestyle, your health, your body, then wait. Period. I just talked with someone yesterday, Tuesday, had a conversation with a woman. She's getting her PhD. She's on the road to getting her PhD. She's got multiple kids, and just very much at the beginning of the call, it gave me this like very direct energy of like, I just need to know the prices. I just need to know if I can afford this. And I was like, okay, but like, I don't know anything about you. Why would I want your money? So I asked her some questions. We got into it, and she was just like, damn, it's not a priority. I got her to that point where she realized it is not a priority to her. Otherwise her actions would be different, and she'd be doing the things, but she just would need the guidance. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, interesting. Let's talk when it's a priority. Like no like rudeness intent there. Like just like, I can't help you right now. That is the reality of it. So let's talk when you're ready. And she was like, immediately her energy shifted, and she was like, wow, never thought that was going to be the outcome of this. Right. And so I think that's the one question, right? Because we can say this isn't a good time or that isn't a good time, and we can't decide that for someone. It's really just like, are you willing and able to make yourself a priority in the midst of whatever you have going on? That's the golden question.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So we're about 35 minutes in. So I think what I would like to do, if it's okay with you, is kind of talk about like, okay, well, what if I am in a situation when I'm traveling or I'm at my in-laws and we're sharing a kitchen and, I'm like, you're in a situation where you still want to make health and fitness a priority, but it's a little bit more difficult. Like, what do you do in those situations? So Marissa and I have talked about this multiple times on the podcast, is that your 100% that you are giving to your health and fitness can look very different in different situations. Like if you kind of ask yourself at the end of the day, did I do what I could with what I had? Like, did I make the best of my situation? Like, then that's okay. Like, it's okay if you didn't hit your macros 100% spot on. It's like, because, hey, like my in-laws are cooking for us and like I don't have a say in what they're doing. And so I tried to like, change portion sizes and different things, but like ultimately it was not up to me, but you still did what you could. Like that's all you can ask, right? Like that's all you can
Yeah.
ask for. Like, or like, hey, was there anything that you could have done differently in that situation? Could you have offered to cook a side dish, or could you have like, just some different things? Could you have maybe prioritized protein at the beginning of the day with like supplements or, whatever it might be?
Mm-hmm.
But just kind of at the end of the day, knowing that like, okay, maybe I didn't have my normal, full 2 hours in the gym at my normal gym. I know all the equipment. I'm very familiar. Like if I had to like pivot and do like a 30-minute like circuit at an apartment style or, a hotel gym, but like that was the best that I could do. But like, hey, I still prioritize myself. I still made movement a priority. I still did this because I know it's going to make me feel better the next day or, feel more accomplished. That is still better than nothing at all. So kind of having that mindset of like, it's okay if you're not hitting your protocols 100%, but you're still doing something, like better is better. It's better than doing nothing at all. So kind of having that mindset, I think, is a little bit different because it is very easy to fall into that trap of all or nothing, especially if you're paying for coaching, because it kind of feels like I have to do my protocols or nothing at all. So that's really what we want to get away from, is like, hey, maybe I couldn't hit like 160 grams of protein, but I still hit 100. And that's a huge win for me because I don't normally do that. Like I don't normally, when I travel, I don't pay attention to my, protein choices, but I did, or I prioritized hydration and like my digestion was better. And I came back from my trip and I felt awesome and I wasn't bloated and I still have that momentum going into the week. So just like small little things that you can do that will really set yourself up for success, even if you're in a more difficult or stressful situation than normal.
Yeah. And like what I'll say too is like, it has more to do with trading off your time than it does adding. I think a lot of people think like, well, it's so busy, I don't have any time. There's no way I could do this. The reality of it is that is a false belief. This person, even though they're super busy, they're spending a lot of time doing a lot of unproductive shit, whether that is scrolling on their phone or watching a ton of TV or going out to eat because they don't have meal prep. Like that, those are all things that are time intensive that if you just replace them with the right habits, you're actually probably saving time. And you have the time. It's how do you allocate it and move it around and get your time in the right place. So the belief of I don't have time is just like, actually, we just need to replace the stupid stuff that you're doing. And so it's like, yeah, just on your point, I think it's important to make that note, because a lot of times the stories that we tell ourselves about the time that we have that we don't have when things are really busy can also get in our way of making any sort of a change, even if it's like Christina said, the small things. The what did I do with the resources that I had? It's not necessarily about uprooting everything and doing everything differently. It's just about how can you continue to take steps forward, even though it's not perfect and it's not 2 hours in the gym every day. But if that were the case, then you wouldn't have this problem in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. And we're not going to get into the roots of like all the, here's what you can do when you're traveling, or here's what you can do. Like, cause we have episodes on like how to be successful when you're traveling and things like that. But I think that the big thing is the reframes. and like what you tell yourself when you're in those situations. And again, instead of saying like, well, I'm traveling, so I can't do this. It's just how can I just maybe you just start small, right? Like, how do I just make sure I'm hydrated this trip?
Yeah.
How do I get in a little bit of extra movement than I normally do? Or like, how do I just maybe make some better decisions when I'm eating out? Like just small little things. And that way, if you're traveling the next time, it's like, okay, well, I already have this habit down. So like, what else can I do now? Just small little things like that. They really, really do add up. It doesn't have to be, and same thing, if you're thinking about signing up for coaching, it doesn't have to be a huge, complete 180, like overhaul of your entire life. It just can be some small changes, and watching those habits just compound over time. It's amazing to see what just putting in like week after week, small little changes, how they add up.
Absolutely. And it's so counterintuitive because like you think you commit to yourself, you make this investment, you declare it to the world that you have to change everything and make all these, and it's oh man, it's the difference between where you think you need to be and where you actually are and what you need in that moment. Another personal thing that I'm working through right now is I'm realizing a lot of the things that I get hard on myself about, disappointed with myself about, are all due to that, is all due to where I am versus where I think I should be based on an arbitrary expectation I'm placing on myself. For what reason? Just because I think I should, because I think that's where I need to be, and not appreciating the time that it's going to take for me to get there, or the process to get there. It's just like very much like I should be here. I'm not, therefore I'm disappointed in myself. And that the same way with your habits, right? Like you're going to become the person that you're envisioning in your head if and only if you can remove that expectation of being that person today or tomorrow and focusing on taking just one step in front of you. The worst thing you can do is focus too much on that person. That's going to hold you back from ever becoming that person. And it's so counterintuitive, but like Christina said, the small habits really do add up. And that is what has to be focused on in order to be successful long-term.
Yeah. And I think, because I have a couple clients in mind who have come to us and they're like, hey, like this just, this is too basic. This just wasn't what I was expecting coming into the program. And it's like, cool. So like, what did you expect? Well, I thought that workouts would be more intense, and I thought this, and I'm like, okay, were you doing any of the basic stuff before? Well, no. Okay. It's like, so like, if we're making those small changes and you're successful with these small changes, like we'll make more changes and we'll go on from there. But like, if we were to completely uproot your entire life, maybe you do it for a couple weeks, but then you're going to burn out and you're gonna be like, I can't sustain this level of fitness. And then you're going to revert back to what you did before. So it's not that, things are just quote unquote easy, but it's like, we recognize the importance of those small habit changes over time and how they can compound, and where you can be just with small little tweaks. And I've also had a couple of clients where they're like, they're 12 weeks into the program or whatever. They're like, I'm hitting my macros. I'm going to the gym. I'm getting in my steps. Like I'm drinking my water. I'm doing everything. What else? Like, what else do I need to be doing? And I'm like, you're here. Like, you've made it. I was like, if you're doing all of these things and they don't feel hard for you, I was like, that's where you want to be. And I was like, and now it's just going to feel super boring. And you're just going to continue to do those stuff like day in and day out. And that is where the magic happens. Like, and it is so like anticlimactic almost, where it's just like, oh, you just kind of do this boring shit day in and day out. And like, that's it.
Yeah. Well, being consistent is hard. Being consistent is really freaking difficult. And a lot of times, like the reason why we coach, the reason why we have businesses is because being consistent is really freaking hard in the face of all of those obstacles ahead. And it's usually, coaching is not, here's the plan for how to do this and just follow it to a T. If that were the case, then the coaching industry would just be selling one-off plans. Right. But what it really is we already probably know, here's what we need to do. And if you don't, then like, here's what you need to do. It's like these 5 things. And then from there, It's how do we make sure that when we fall off less and less every time. We learn how to adapt and we learn how to stay on track more often than we are not staying on track. And when we get that to the point where we can be consistent about 80% of the time, then we're going to see that progress. And then it's just about continuing to keep the consistency in place in spite of all the obstacles that we're going through. That is why we have businesses. That's why we have jobs, is because the consistency is truly the hardest part. Once, the knowledge is filled and we get kind of that baseline understanding, it's not rocket science. It's very simple. It's not easy.
Yeah, I love that. And like, to go off of that, like Marissa and I, we've been doing this a very long time, and like we have hired coaches. And I would say that there's probably less time that we've been on our own than it is that we've had coaches ourselves. And it's, we know what to do. Like we do this shit for a living, but it's just different having and it's nice to have that extra layer of accountability. Or if you are struggling, to go to them and be like, hey, how do I overcome this situation? Like with what I'm going through, or it's just nice. So coaching is not an admission of like, I don't know what to do, or I need all of this help. It's just, sometimes it's just really nice and it's easier to hit your goals when you have an additional layer of accountability.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's just a little bit of backwards thinking, I guess. But anyways, when it comes to being unstoppable, I guess the takeaways then are, number one, do it when it's hard, do it when it's difficult, lean into that when the circumstances aren't right, because that's the point. And it's really more about learning how to be consistent in those obstacles that are ahead of you than it is about being perfect or having the perfect plan or doing everything right 100% of the time. It's really about learning how to mess up better.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it.
Learn how to mess up better, and you'll probably be really successful in your health and fitness journey. And it'll honestly probably feel very second nature.
Yeah. And I think that's really important. And kind of like what we were talking about earlier, it's like Marissa and I and other fitness professionals that you see, like we are not robots. Like we still have times where we struggle, but our struggles may look very different than they did previously because we've been at this a very long time. And maybe our struggle is, like you said, it's like an 80% as opposed to like a 0 or 10% or where we used to be before. And that is what keeps us going, because it's like we might fall off track, but we're able to hop right back on, and it's not as big of a setback as it once was. So really just getting away from that all or nothing mentality. And I love what you said, like really leaning into that resistance and reframing and kind of thinking, hey, this is a challenge. So let's see what I can do with this. Let's see what I can learn, and how do I improve next time I'm in a situation like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Anything else?
No, learned a lot about myself during this episode though, so thanks.
You're very welcome. I'm glad we brought this topic up.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, we hope that you guys enjoyed this episode as well. Hopefully you got something out of it. And if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. You can find both of us on Instagram. You can find me at Christy Lynn Fit. Marissa is at Marissa Roy Fitness. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we hope to see you back next week.